PeanutButter&Triggered. I'm Scott, joined by my boy
Jay Eastwood. What's up?
What's up, everybody? Today we're talking retro games, a little bit of news, and I think that's pretty much the extent of it. We got our top 10 favorite retro games, and when we talk about retro games, we're talking about PlayStation 1 era and back. So
yeah.
We're not talking, I mean, that's still pretty new for retro, but that's like our grind.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing, too, like, it could go pretty damn far back if you're stretching, but, like, these are going to be our list, so there's bound to be some backlash, I'm assuming, and then on top of that, like, I'm just going to issue this as a disclaimer, there's probably not going to be much of, like, ColecoVision and Atari.
We're millennials, so I was born in 1990. That means that you're getting games from 1990 and after. I mean, I played, like, old Pac-Man games and stuff, but I feel like a retro game usually has the memory attached to it. For me, like, the game was really fun, but you also were playing with your sibling or, you know, something like that.
Right.
So,
and on top of that, too, there's only so much I can do with those games.
Yeah, no, for sure. Pretty much Nintendo and after, it's like they're a little deeper, the games themselves. Heard that.
We're also going to be talking about some grand old news. A lot of stuff has popped up in the recent few days, actually. Primarily about some of the games we talked about last week, but I don't know if anybody's actually seen a little bit of this, but Forza Horizon 4 has officially leaked their car list, and I'm stoked to say that VW is officially back. I know that I saw a little VW bug in the trailer for the game, but
there's a ridiculous amount of cars. Like, I was just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, like, dang, this is a lot of cars.
And a lot of Forza Horizon exclusive vehicles that just haven't made it out into the world, obviously.
Like, are they prototypes or what?
No, they're probably just special tunes, special aero kits and stuff like that. But one giant gaping void in this particular car list, Toyota. Toyota is gone.
Have they said anything about it?
No.
It's just gone.
You know what? And they're really bad about that because this is exactly what happened last year, or the last time, I should say last year. The last time they released a Forza Horizon game is every time there's like a very noticeable absence of a car company, they just don't say anything. And then leave it up to the internet to start, you know.
Must be a licensing issue. It has to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's all it was last year with VW. Maybe that and the whole Dieselgate scandal, but they wouldn't make a statement on it. They just said that, you know, VW will not be coming to Forza Horizon 3.
Well, they got VW back and they subtracted Toyota.
Yeah. It's a little bittersweet for me because I am such a VW fan, but I think I like Toyotas too. I like them a lot, and I know that we were talking about getting your Camry.
Yeah, the O2 Camry is not going to be in there. It's such a disappointment.
I did check. There is a Mark I Rabbit in there, so you know I'll be creating mine.
Perfect. What about Fiat 500, the old one?
They have 3 Fiats, and I don't think the 500's in there.
I wanted, like, max speed of 55. I remember I played Forza back in the day, and I had, like, maybe it wasn't Forza, it was Gran Turismo, and I was on Talladega. And Talladega, the corners are super sloped, like, really sloped. And I put in the Fiat 500 on one of those slopes and started, and it was going so slow, it just slid sideways down that. It was going, like, 45.
Jeez.
But anyway,
well, you could always just like swap a motor in there. And wow, there's a very loud car in the background as we're talking about Forza. I don't know if anybody could hear that, but I definitely heard it.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that was not planned. But yeah, you could always drop a larger motor in there.
Well, I didn't.
Oh, well, your fault.
Well, okay. Keeping with that kind of, I guess, sports games, NBA Live has announced its new cover boy. And you know how to pronounce it. Is it Joel Embiid? Embiid, I was close.
Embiid's the name.
He's their cover boy. I know nothing about this gentleman. I do know he plays for the 76ers, and that's about the extent of it.
Well, I can tell you a little bit more about him. He is outspoken on social media. He has tried to slide in Rihanna's DMs on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. I don't know, but he's been very vocal about his crushes out in the real world. He's also a phenom when it comes to the basketball court. He's probably one of the most skilled big men out there. probably just one of the most skilled basketball players in general out there right now.
Well, that's probably why he's on the cover of the video game.
Yeah, and he's still extremely young. This was his kind of breakout year that just passed.
Wow.
So I mean, as far as anybody that they could have picked, I think they made a proper decision. Heck yeah.
I mean, it's better than having LeBron, I guess, because I like LeBron, but I feel like he'd be on the cover of every game forever if, they just picked the best guy in the NBA.
But yeah, I mean, he's clearly the best player in the world, and give everybody else a chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any more news?
Well, yeah. It's kind of on the subject of mobile games. I'm sure you've heard about this, but the new Westworld mobile game.
Yep, I heard about this.
Yeah. So the new Westworld mobile game is according to Fallout or Bethesda, is in quotes a blatant ripoff of their Fallout mobile game.
Well, they actually found their code in it, and from what I understand,
what in the world? Tell me more.
They found their code in it. I believe the company that's in charge of making the Westworld game at some point did something for Bethesda. Don't know exactly what. Subcontracted for them, so they had the code. And this code, they found it in the Westworld stuff. And so Bethesda is currently suing Westworld for stealing their code.
Bruh.
That's unacceptable.
You're going to lose every time. I think that it's impossible for Westworld to win if they have their code in their game.
Yeah, that's pretty screwed up.
Yeah.
Hey, luckily for them, that show is doing just fine, though.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sure... do you even watch that show, actually?
I watched the first half of the first season. I need to watch it again.
Okay, how dare you. For any of you that haven't watched that show, it just wrapped up their second season. And boy, oh boy, is there a cliffhanger.
Is it worth watching?
Oh, it's worth watching several times.
How many... Is it an hour long?
Yeah, about an hour long.
How many episodes?
45 minutes.
Maybe I'll have to get into that.
You got 2 seasons.
Yeah. Well, the first season was pretty good. I caught up and then I stopped watching it.
Well, and be sure that you can watch it around everybody because there's a lot of gratuitous violence and there's also a lot of nudity.
I'm coming.
Yeah, I mean I watched the first part and it's like naked people being shot and all this stuff.
Yeah, so just be careful. Make sure that there are no children out there that are watching it with you.
They're coming for my kids.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Also in the news, I don't know if anybody else has heard about this one. I kind of had to dig a little deeper for this one. Fortnite is back in the news again because their physical copies are selling for outrageous amounts online.
How much, you know?
I do know, and it's going to make you sick, so grab your barf bag.
Did these come to Walmart or something?
They were everywhere for a while. I think they were mostly sold at Best Buys, but they're now selling online for $450. So if you all have those physical copies of Fortnite, it might be a good time to sell. I don't see them becoming much more
much more valuable
than they are.
I remember when League of Legends first came out, they released a physical edition, and my buddy Chris got it. And I look back and I saw them, they were so cheap. It was $15 because they're it's free. Why would I buy a physical edition? Not knowing that it was going to become the most popular game in the world. And the only way to get those skins was to purchase the physical edition. I should have bought one.
Well, you snooze, you lose, brother.
I guess so.
Do you have any other news that you'd like to
I have a little bit of news. New Predator movie announced.
Ooh, do tell.
Looks horrible, in my opinion. I mean, Predator looks kind of cool, but the characters just look stupid. The jokes were dumb, like a guy putting a cigarette out on his tongue. It's not that. It's just, I don't know. It just seems so cheesy, but maybe that's what they're going for.
Well, I thought there was a really good joke in there. Keegan-Michael Key of Key and Peele fame was telling a Your Mama joke. Mm-hmm. He said your mom is like a video game rated E.
E for everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. It made me cringe. There's no way he got through that and actually was this is going to be good.
Yeah, well, I think that the movie looks, on a grading scale, maybe a C-. I do think that I'm not giving anything away here because it's in a trailer. There are 2 different types of Predators now. The new one looks awesome. I'm gonna watch it.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it on Netflix whenever it comes out on Netflix.
Oh, how dare you!
In other news, not necessarily gaming news, but interesting news, some of the original, I think they're called the Marty McFly ones. One of the original ones used on set is just one up for sale. You can actually go look at it in a store called Index in downtown Portland. And that shoe is currently on eBay right now for about $23,000. It's only the left foot, and it's disintegrating. Like, literally, the shoe's falling apart, and it says disintegrating.
It looks like the shoe's like crapping out Lucky Charms.
Yeah, exactly. There are 100... Last time I checked, there are over 100 bids on it at $23,000. So that would probably make it the most expensive Nike ever.
And where is this shoe?
It's at the Index, which apparently is a shoe store in downtown Portland.
Oh.
So you can go look at it right now.
If any of you listening out there visiting Portland, Oregon, apparently there's no shipping either. So you have to pick it up in Portland.
You have to go to the Index and pick it up in Portland if you purchase it. If you're buying a shoe for $23,000, I'm guessing you can afford the plane ticket to come pick it up if you live somewhere else.
Yeah, good point.
So, or pay some idiot to do it. Other news. So PUBG just started released its new map. It's called Sanhok. It's a quarter of the size of the other maps, so it promotes a lot of firefights and that kind of stuff. It's pretty fun. I played it a couple times. But they also did a DLC, which is pretty lame, and it's pretty much everyone agrees that it's stupid. It just basically gives you a few kind of quests to complete, and then you get stupid clothes for it. And it's $10, and everyone agrees that it's stupid.
Yeah, I won't be buying that.
I won't either.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're trying to make it more than just a battle royale. Since I'm going to predict that battle royale fad's going to die out pretty soon.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I mean, especially since everybody's doing it.
There's one called Mavericks that has 300 players. But yeah. I think that you're right. I think eventually it gets boring.
Speaking of getting boring, I do have an update. So I remember I was telling everybody that I would go out and play the No Man's Sky update that just came out. And I've also been reading about it too. Somebody's already found somebody else's base and rated them for 2.5 million credits. Just in the game, it's not that much because everything's so expensive in it. But the game, just in general now, is more playable.
If I might borrow it from you.
Yeah, definitely. That's fine by me. But it's more playable. It's only slightly more fun. You gotta have people to play with, otherwise it's just the same game. Is there
a party system or anything?
No, not that I know of. Only because I don't know anybody else that's playing anymore.
So it's just So basically, this is the game that they promised.
This is the game that they promised that should have come out initially. 2 years late, too late. And then the other thing is that it has missions and stuff that you can complete. So the missions make it more playable and fun. And then obviously the ability to be able to play with your friends makes it more fun. It's just too little too late though.
Yeah, for sure. It's already in the bargain bin.
Yeah. I mean, if Fortnite's selling for $450 per copy, I'd imagine
for a free game.
I would imagine that No Man's Sky is selling for 450 cents per copy.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, the last piece of news I have, that if you're listening to this when we release it, the Steam Summer Sale is up, and you can get all the computer games that you want for cheap.
Oh, hey, is the PlayStation Flash Sale over and done with?
I looked at the Flash Sale, but I don't remember what was on it.
Yeah.
It's 70% off. I don't know.
So the game, I was excited for it because the games were up to 90% off as far as I remember, and they have some decent titles in there. A lot of them for PlayStation 3. So if you remember and miss any of those PlayStation 3 titles, go back and check it out. I think I downloaded a few Resident Evil games.
Ooh.
I also downloaded Mega Man 9 and 10. Pretty sweet. But other than that, I mean, there really weren't. Doom's on there. That one's also decent. PlayStation 4 games are kind of sparse.
Can you get Resident Evil 2 as a classic on there? No.
Yeah, tell me about it.
One game I forgot we didn't talk about in the Resident Evil thing, speaking of Resident Evil, is Resident Evil Code Veronica.
I didn't like it.
That one is available. That's why I say that.
Oh, really? Did you like... Oh.
It was okay.
Sorry, everybody. I'm pouring more coffee into my mug on Mike.
He drinks probably 15 cups of coffee a day.
That's not true.
Okay.
That's a damn line. You know it.
It's not.
It's 20.
It's 20. I think that's all I have for news. The last news is they're releasing a statue for Spyro, the game with the remake, and it looks like the kind of polygonal. I don't know.
A polygon form.
A polygon form of the dragon, just like in the original Spyro. It's a cool looking statue, but it's $475. So
Okay.
not worth it.
Yeah, I'd rather go buy myself a copy of Fortnite
With the PlayStation, yeah, exactly.
and have $25 left over.
Yeah, exactly. And you could buy a Steam card or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Spyro. Not that much.
And I'm the same way. I like Spyro, but I'm not for that statue. That's ridiculous. There's also the last piece of news I have is there's a lot of talk about GameStop going out of business. We're hearing a lot of rumors about them starting to sell comic books or starting to turn their business model into something else. I don't know if you've been in a GameStop lately, but there's like a lot of like trinkets and like board games and just all sorts of stuff. And so it looks like there's going to be a real, kind of change.
Well, I think that GameStop had already started to kind of morph what they were doing in their stores, like, I don't know, as recently as like maybe 4 or 5 years ago too.
Yeah.
They were selling a lot of mobile phones out of their stores. And,
yeah, Cricket.
Yeah. I mean, because GameStop is owned by Cricket's. Well, it was owned by one of the Cricket's third-party retailers of Spring Mobile. Okay. Or something like that. But
and all the employees hated that.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, I could only imagine what weird quotas that they had. But that might also explain, like, how aggressive their buybacks and their trading credits are for systems and games now.
No, it's true. I mean, I walked in with I had an old controller, and they gave me $25 for it. That's pretty good for 20. So, I don't know, like, I think that they're trying to find their niche, because we know that Amazon's offering 20% off all new games. That's you can't
That's
really
a killer.
You can't compete with that. And the reason that Amazon gives 20% off all their new games with Prime is because you're going to buy your kitty litter, you're going to buy your drinking. Or you're just going to buy other stuff with it, is what I'm trying to say. Which they don't have other stuff, so they can't give you 25% off or 20% off the main thing they sell. So they're trying to figure out how to get people back in the door.
Well, they better try really freaking hard.
I do admit, I was in GameStop the other day, and I bought the Pro membership.
Well, what if they go out of business?
The dude was cool. He was really nice, and I know that those guys get paid on that or get credit. And he's hooked me up multiple times, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, come back, and if you see anything you want hanging up, just let me know, and I'll tell you when we're taking it down, and I'll just give it to you." So he's just been really cool. So I was like, you know what? For $12, I'll do it, just so he gets the credit for it.
Scott, you're a good dude.
Well, what can I say?
Yeah. Well, speaking of good dudes, you guys remember Britney Spears?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
This isn't like extreme breaking news or anything, but there's a little bit of a prankster on the prowl in the Spears residence.
Let me guess, it's a Federline.
You're close. It's a Spears Federline of the
snap.
Spears Federline lineage. His name is Jaden Spears Federline, and that's her son. He's been abducting her phone and making prank videos and posting them to social media.
With the little furniture?
Yeah, that little shit.
Serious. Did you see what he's actually recording?
No, I wasn't interested enough for that.
Okay.
So. And I don't really care what he has to say anyways. I'm in it for Britney Spears, so.
Leave your stupid comments in your pocket.
What's that from?
The Room.
The Room?
Yeah,
oh,
it's the Tommy Wiseau movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anything for my princess.
Yeah, that's my favorite movie. But yeah, so what's his name? Jaden. He's out on the prowl. That's the good Jaden, not Jaden Smith.
Yeah, I guess it's the good Jaden. I didn't even know who he was before this right now.
Nobody likes Jaden Smith. So, anyways, let's switch gears a little bit here.
I like the memes.
So let's switch gears a little bit. We're gonna start talking retro games, and what sort of feelings, what sort of ideas come to mind when I talk about retro games for you, Scott?
It's really my childhood, to be honest with you. All the games that I put, this isn't a top 10 games of all time. I know that people would disagree. Probably, well, I know for a fact they'll disagree with my list. These are my favorite top 10 retro games. A lot of these games wouldn't fall anywhere on anybody's, or a lot of other people's lists.
A good distinction to point out, too, because like I know that there are going to be a lot of people triggered out there, and by a lot, I mean all 12 of you that listen to us.
Shout out to, what's his, Javad?
Javad. Yeah, Javad. Hey, I know you're not listening. I know you're only a fan of us on social media. He's trying to get those likes, but
shout out.
Shout out. But yeah, so the distinction was a good point to make, because for my list, it's way different from your list, and these are definitely our favorites.
Yeah, a lot of them probably wouldn't. I know at least one or two of mine probably wouldn't fall in even like the top 1,000 games of all time. You know?
Yeah. So, considering your list, what sort of feelings you get when somebody says retro games?
Well, like I said, I get feelings of childhood because I was a huge gamer as a kid. My grandma, which I think we've talked about before, was a big gamer, so it reminds me of her. And then playing with like my older sister, because she used to play through Resident Evil 1 because I was too scared to play through Resident Evil 1, so I'd sit there and watch her. 8-year-old Scott was afraid of Resident Evil 1 when that zombie turned its head. But those are like the feelings I get. It's nostalgia.
Yeah. And I think we already talked about this in the beginning of the show, but like when we talk about retro games, we're talking PlayStation 1 on back. So with some of these games too, they might be heavy in one system over the other. Sure. That's just because some of those systems were better.
I was a big PlayStation 1 fan. I really was.
Oh, I was a big Nintendo 64 fan.
See? I never had an N64. My grandpa and grandma had an N64 with Mario 64, which I think came with the console, and then they had Cruising California. That's all they had. Those were the two games. Oh, and they had Castlevania, that old 3D horrible Castlevania game. Those are the three games they had, so we never played it.
Well, that's why you're not a Nintendo 64 fan.
My grandpa used to get pissed because he'd say, because I always remember going into like the GameStop and they had all the new N64s, and my grandma's like, I want the new N64 because she was Super Nintendo. She never played it. She never cared about it. And my grandpa was always like, we spent so much money on that N64 and you never play it.
Do you still have it?
The N64 is long gone. I still have the Super Nintendo of hers, but I don't know where the N64 went. I think it's probably still at my grandpa's house.
Well, allow me some time to get you very well acquainted with the Nintendo 64. I do have mine still, and I do have good games.
Oh, terrific.
Okay, so to kick off your list, let's each start off with our top 10. Scott, you go first.
Do you want to do one by one?
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 10 is Star Ocean. I cannot remember the subtitle to the Star Ocean, but it was a game that was on PlayStation 1. I think, Star Ocean to the End of Time. The cool thing about this game was you selected one or the other, a boy or a girl. It had an interesting combat system. I'm not huge on anime games. This is definitely an anime game, but it had an interesting combat system. But the one thing I liked is there were a ton of skills you could master, including things like cooking. And so you could actually do like cooking competitions, and you could just do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And I always remember that young me wanted to get a high level. And when you started the game, at the very beginning of the game, there's kind of like an intro portion where you're in this little area, and your guy came from space, and you're kind of in this like less technological society. And you start with this like laser pistol, and it kills everything in one hit. And then it gets broken later in the story. But I walked around for like 5 hours just grinding my dude's level up, so it made it easier later in the game just using the laser pistol. Love that game. It's highly rated. It really is. So that was my number 10.
If you could narrow it down to maybe like 2 or 3 points, what makes it creep into your top 10?
Memories of playing it with my grandma.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's going to be a couple of these ones. The inventory system and how you could actually look at every single item, and there was a lot of items. And then the fighting systems. Okay. Like the fighting combat system, that's what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Okay.
What's your number 10?
My number 10 is on Nintendo 64, and it is to this date, the best wrestling game of all time.
Uh-oh.
And for those of you who are a fan of the WWF, you're going to be a fan of this game. It's called WWF No Mercy.
Oh.
The worst soundtrack of all time. However, the funnest gameplay. I'm talking about being able to fight your foes backstage. I'm talking about being able to slap somebody on the head with a steel chair. It's super fun.
Those games were fun back in the day. I'd just Bring It and SmackDown.
Yeah, and this was the first game with the introduction of the Hell in the Cell. That was a big one too, because you could choke slam or like pile drive or power bomb through the top. Yeah.
That.
So the biggest reason why I put this on my list is because I don't think that a lot of people actually even play wrestling games anymore. At least not the same way that they did before. Because the WWF is the WWE is not as popular as it used to be.
Yeah.
And then on top of that too, the games just have progressively gone downhill.
And there's so many of them that it's hard for a lot of people don't remember which one they played or, you know.
Yeah, and one of the coolest parts of the actual game itself was the gameplay. Mm-hmm. It was intuitive. The reversal system just worked. It kept a pace to the wrestling match that is like unbelievably lost on the new games. And then you could custom make your created wrestlers and stuff, and they would participate in the story mode.
Do you still have that game?
You better believe I still have it. I have it on my phone and my Nintendo 64. Yeah, so that definitely does take number 10 for me, and that's a very solid number 10.
Solid number 10. Well, my number 9 is Tenchu Stealth Assassins. I already talked about how disappointed I was that that new game isn't Tenchu. The one that's at E3, Shadows Die Twice. Tenchu was one of my favorite games as a kid. Both this one and the next one kind of going with this. My uncle at the time, Ian, had a modded PS1. I think you added a chip in to the PS1
to play burned games.
Yeah. And he had Tenchu, and he had the next game, which I'll talk about here in a second. But so audio was a little weird. But I played so much Tenchu. I loved going behind. You'd like slit people's throats, and like
stealth kills.
10-year-old me was like, "Whoa!" because it spit blood all over the walls and everything, like a Kill Bill amount of blood.
Yeah, that did have a very Kill Bill feel, by the way.
And then you could just leave like poison rice on the ground, and like dogs would come up and eat it, and that's how you got around killing the dogs.
Oh, I'd feed it to the people.
The people too, sure.
Yeah.
And then the throwing stars. There's just like a bunch of items, and then it was one of the first kind of 3D games to use a grappling hook, so you really could use a lot of levels and get on top of roofs, and then you had a bow in the second game. It was one of my favorite games, older games for sure.
Well, here's how innovative that game was. Like, as soon as you said Tenchu, I was like, oh man, wasn't it on PS2? Because I totally thought that it could have been on PS2. That's how fun the game was. Yeah. It could have easily been on a next generation console. Definitely ahead of its time, and on top of that, like the inventory system was actually really good too. Like
before the game, you would go into this like storeroom, and there's just a wall where it had like tons of different things you could take, and like you could take, you could use your money to buy ninja stars or whatever, and that's what you took into the map.
Mm-hmm. And there was obviously a finite sort of amount of items that you could carry in your inventory,
for sure,
and you had to prepare yourself because like. In times, there would be certain items that you just wouldn't want to take anyways, right? So you had to be very strategic with how you brought certain items into each stage.
Especially at the end of the game, it gets really hard.
Yeah.
The game is very hard. So yeah. So that's my number 9.
Well, that's a damn good number 9,
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. So the next one on my list is number 9 on Jay Eastwood's list. It's Street Fighter 2. And I'm talking about like the Turbo Edition one, the one that has like Fei Long and T-Hawk and all the other characters. So these bring back memories of playing to me what was a next gen console at the time at Mr. Lonely's house. Mr. Lonely's my cousin.
Okay.
He and his brother Francisco, they were monsters on this game. They had it down to a science. I'm talking like constantly like delivering these devastating combos, and I'd sit there and I'd try to keep up with them, and then I would sit there and watch them play. It was even fun to watch. I would sit there and watch them play, beat the entire game with every single character, read all of their character endings. It was amazing. I love that game. And then on top of that too, I was invested in like a few different characters to be able to like kind of research even later on in life research like what their backstory was, because this was the first game that I actually cared about Street Fighter. Yeah,
this for you youngins out there, this is before the internet. Well, the internet was there, but when you got a new game, you didn't just instantly go online and look everything up. You had to learn it.
You had to buy the walkthrough if you had like enough money to buy the game and the walkthrough.
Yeah, or for $9.95 you could buy the big cheap book too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but this was before, so like when those fighting games came out, there was like a bunch of hidden things and like that you didn't know about. I remember going to school and people would be like, "Dude, you know if you do this button combination, like it unlocks this guy," and I'd be like so excited to go home, like, "Dude, I gotta try that. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that." So it's a different time. And I had Street Fighter 2 on Sega, I think.
Yeah,
the divorced console.
The divorced console, yeah. So after we were done playing the divorced console, I think there is maybe one or two games that I played on the divorced console. We would definitely fire up Street Fighter 2. And like I said before, my favorite character by far on that game was Fei Long. He was like a Bruce Lee ripoff. It was like if Bruce Lee and Jean-Claude Van Damme had a baby, it would be Fei Long. And that guy was so cool because like he would like enter fights with like this ruthless aggression. Like every single hit he was screaming, he was flying all over the stages, and then on top of that, like who could forget like some of the more classic characters like Chun-Li and Ken Ryu and Blanca.
I mean that's like OG, like really solid competition fighter.
Yeah, and the music in that video game was amazing too.
It was a good game.
Yeah, so that's my number 9.
All right, so I'm on to my number 8. My number 8 kind of goes along with my uncle at the time having a burnt PlayStation or a modded PlayStation to play burnt games. It's Syphon Filter 1, and I played the heck out of Syphon Filter 2 as well. Syphon Filter 1 was one of my favorite games. I always remember you started with the taser, and you could tase people from like across the map. And the funniest thing about this, well, I guess it's kind of funny. It's a little bit horrible, I guess, is the camera would actually change to them, and they'd be standing there getting shocked, and if you held it down long enough, they'd catch on fire.
Yeah, I remember that.
They'd just be like, "Ah!" and they'd be on fire, and you'd be holding the taser. It would be more like this,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But holding the taser down, and it had, this is pre-dual analog. It was just a single, like, you played with just the D-stick, or the D-pad.
Yeah.
So there's no analog sticks. So the controls were really cool. It had a cool lock-on style, and the way you rolled with his name was Logan. Gabriel Logan.
How the hell did you remember that?
His name was Gabriel Logan because he was like my hero. Like I'd go out and, like when I was 10-year-old Scott would go out and pretend to be Gabriel Logan. Yeah.
What'd that look like?
You ever remember his run? If you guys are listening, go on YouTube, open up YouTube right now, look up Syphon Filter 1 and watch the way he runs. He like kicks his butt almost. Like he literally kicks his butt. I used to run around outside like that.
Did you get made fun of mercilessly?
No. I do my own thing. I run my own thing.
Okay. You know who would agree with you on this game?
Who?
Our boy John Radford.
Oh,
Triple Option Sports. He won't shut the hell up about Syphon Filter.
Syphon Filter's a great game. That's
I love that game too. And the other cool thing about that was the inventory management system too. How you could cycle between each of the weapons.
And you could look at the guns and stuff. That was really cool. Yeah. My, I guess shout out to one of our listeners, Raven. She was telling. I always remember one time she was in the maze with the flamethrower boss. And I think it was on Syphon Filter 1. It might have been Syphon Filter 2, to be honest with you. And it auto-saved when she was almost dead. And so she had to restart the game because it had auto-saved when she had no health left in the boss. And she just couldn't pass the boss because she had no health left. Old game problems.
Yeah, no, it's terrible, man.
So what is your number 8?
Okay, so my number 8 is definitely a fan favorite. This would make it onto a lot of people's top 10. It's instant classic Mario Kart 64.
It's definitely a classic. I played a lot of Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Original. And I remember, I think the big thing that had was, didn't have like Waluigi and stuff?
No.
Oh, or Wario.
It had Wario, yeah.
That's who I had, not Waluigi.
So, let me see how well I do with this, because I'm going to try to memorize every single character in that game. There was Mario, Luigi, Toad, Peach, Wario, Yoshi, Bowser, Donkey Kong, and if I'm missing somebody...
Then don't tell us.
No, please tell us, and Scott will chop off my hands.
I always just remember playing as Wario, and that was so cool.
Yeah, and I think that the other cool part was they added a little bit of physics into it, too. So if you had one of the heavier set characters, Donkey Kong, Wario, or Bowser, if you ran into one of the other characters, they would spin out. It would actually hurt them.
But they were slower, right?
You know what? I don't think so. There was rumors of that. Yeah, there were rumors that they were slower and all that
That's
stuff.
OP.
But yeah, so I was always the heavier character, especially in battle mode. And then obviously it was a slight improvement on the Super Nintendo one, but the Mario Kart 64 had beautiful stages.
Yeah, I always remember that dirt track.
Yeah, Wario Stadium or Choco Mountain.
Wario Stadium.
Yeah, Wario Stadium was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was a tough one too. And I'm seeing all kinds of videos now about people running through speed runs on some of those. Like I can't remember what the actual term is called, but where people like run into a barrier and jump at the I think it's like 0.2 seconds before it like hurts their character, and it'll actually like cut the stage.
Yep.
I remember the biggest. I'm gonna throw some quotations up here. Secret. Was Rainbow Road. If you cut the stage, you at the very, very beginning of the stage, and you're going down that huge downhill, right before you start to get too much of an incline, you jump off over the barrier, and then miraculously, if you well time it, on like almost halfway through the stage, and then if you don't hit any barriers, you don't get hit by like the chomps, then you get an excellent time. My brother Mikey. He completed the stage in like 3 minutes, and like nobody could do it. None of our friends could do it. Oh, and I'm telling you, I watched him do the whole thing. He jumped the stage he jumped the track every single time. Didn't run into any of the enemies, and didn't actually hit any of the barriers either. Wow. It was really tough.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Well, and then on top of that too, when you beat all the cups and stuff, you get the option of like choosing how many CCs you want your cart, and then you eventually choose whether or not you want to flip the courses.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
A lot of options.
Yeah, and a lot of little tiny secrets, and battle was always fun too. So that's my number 8.
So my number 7, this has a special memory for me too. It's on Nintendo. Most of you people probably won't even know what this game is. But when I was 1 year for Christmas, my mom bought me this game, and she had put it up in the attic, and I didn't realize that she had saved it up in the attic. And so I was in the attic for whatever reason, and I found it. I was like, dude, a Nintendo game. And I took it to my mom. I was like, a Nintendo game. She's like, I bought that for you for Christmas. I know you didn't mean to find it, so you can have it now. And it was called Daydreaming Davy. This game is about a kid who's sitting in school, and he's sitting in math class he's sitting in a history class, and he's really bored, and the teacher's talking, and he starts daydreaming, and that's the game. So, like, you're in history class, and then you're in a Western, so you go around, and it's kind of it's not a great game, to be honest, but...
This made it your top 10.
No, because it's a great game to me, but I'm saying if from outside, if you go play it, you're probably not going to have too much fun with it. It has that ingrained memory in me, and you collect like a couple guns, and then you do all sorts of things. You do it reminds me of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That's exactly what it's like. You go through different parts of history. There's like one part where you're like in ancient Rome, and there's one part, I can't remember the other parts, but it was there's like knights and stuff, medieval times, and I love that game. It was on Nintendo, so it's pretty simplistic. If you want to try a game, get the ROM and try it out. I mean.
Hey, why the hell not?
Yeah, so that's my number 7.
Okay, solid. My number 7 is on PlayStation 1. It's called Marvel vs. Capcom. I chose Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
I never played any of them, so...
Oh, they're all really good. And what makes them really good is if you like Street Fighter and you like
Marvel,
then that's the game for you. Because a lot of these characters will come from the Marvel comics, and they'll have like really cool special abilities. Like,
and a lot of characters, right? A lot of options.
Well, yeah, and then you get all these like hyper special combos too. So like War Machine had the crazy proton cannon.
That's cool.
Venom had this like weird, like he turns into a giant like mess of symbiote, and he like just shreds people.
This was on PlayStation 1.
Yeah, PlayStation 1. The only reason I remember that is because I used the backwards compatibility on my PlayStation 3 first gen, and I was like, man, I want to play this game again. And I remember it having the black disc.
Yep.
So
I remember that.
Yeah. And then me, Mr. Lonely, and my brother and Francisco, his brother, would all get together and we would take turns trying to beat each other. Super fun. Mega Man was really good in that game. And then, like, if you take it through, like, the story mode, then you get to defeat the character Onslaught, who's, like, really big in Marvel Comics. Awesome.
No, that's a good one for sure. I've heard good things about it. Keeping with the fighting game tradition, I suppose. I'm not a huge fighting game person, but my number 6, that's where our number 6, Tekken 3.
Ooh.
I played the crap out of Tekken 3. I played Tekken 2 and Tekken 1 as well. But Tekken 3 definitely holds a special place in my heart. For one, it has my favorite fighter. I believe his name's Harong or something like that. He's this like redheaded South Korean. I think he's from Korea. He's a kickboxer or taekwondo guy, so he kicks a lot. He's always my favorite, and I could just always whoop everybody with him. And also the modes, there's a volleyball mode. You can just play volleyball. There's a story mode where you ran through kind of like a side-by-side beat-em-up. There was a ton of characters, including a little dragon guy called Gon, who was like half the size of anybody else. There's another dude who was a drunk that you could unlock. Mr. B was his name, and he couldn't stand up. So the whole fight he'd be laying down. So there's just like a couple like really cool characters I really enjoyed. That game had a lot to do with level, like what level you're on, low or high. Some people attack a lot low, so you couldn't just block. Like, there are some people who did cartwheels, so they attacked a lot high. There's just all sorts of people. So that was my favorite. It was on PlayStation 1. That was one of my favorite games. That's my number 6.
You're probably seeing as how my favorite character in Street Fighter 2 was Fei Long. Guess who my favorite character in Tekken was?
What's his name? Lee?
Law.
Yeah,
Law was dope, man. Yeah, taking that Bruce Lee rip-off character to another franchise. It was awesome.
I also loved Paul Phoenix. He was like this biker dude.
Yeah.
And then there's this other dude named Brian Fury who, like, when you beat the game with him, the cutscene is that, like, everyone's chasing after him and the tank pulls around and he just rips the turret off the tank and throws it. That's like the end of the game.
Yeah. Him and Yoshimitsu had some beef.
Yeah. Mr. B created Yoshimitsu. That's the story behind that.
Oh, what? Yeah. He was the scientist dude?
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes a couple other cameos. And then, what's his name? Heihachi
Mishima and
was dope.
Jin Kazama. The one thing that sucked is that game didn't have Devil, which is like Jin would turn into Devil.
Yeah.
And then there's Jun Kazama. I know all this because I'm a huge nerd. I used to...
Kazuya was dope, too.
Kazuya is Jin's dad,
yeah.
And Jun is his mom. And then he has a sister that I can't remember her name.
Well, solid choice, and I'm sure that won over a lot of fans that we have out there.
Yeah, Tekken's good high quality.
Yeah, and I believe they've consistently been pumping out like great games ever since. I don't think there was a miss as far as like any of the games that they've released. It's been getting better and better.
Me and my boy Robert would go through phases where we just grind out playing a lot of Tekken.
Right, and talk about good stories. That's a good story in a fighting game.
Yeah, for sure. So you see your number 6?
My number 6, and this might surprise some people actually because it's kind of low on my list. I picked Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1.
That's a good game.
It's a great game, and
I don't think it's the height of the franchise. That's my personal opinion, though. It's a great game, though.
Yeah, and that's why I have it at number 6 too, because they've consistently gotten better since that. But at the same time, there are 5 more games that I have here that got to take the cake.
Yeah.
But the reason why I chose to put Metal Gear Solid on this list is because they took the whole stealth sort of feel to any game, and they perfected it on the PlayStation 1.
I feel like it's really the first actual stealth game.
Yeah. I mean, you could even go back to like the Nintendo version. Like, there's no way you're gonna run away from those dogs. Like, you're gonna get killed because you start off with no weapons. But the other reason why I really enjoyed this game too is like the writing was impeccable. The ability to break the fourth wall with Psycho Mantis is everybody's favorite. That's the one thing that really, like, people really remember about that game.
It did things, that just weren't normal.
Yeah.
It was like something where when it happened to you, you had to tell someone, like, dude, guess what? I played Metal Gear Solid last night, and I had to change my controller port.
Yeah, like, really solid, memorable characters, too. So, like, Gray Fox, that was another one that everybody loved and has been praying for Gray Fox to come back, even though it's probably not going to happen.
That game's just so good at that stuff.
Yeah. And then on top of that, too, like, just the story itself was a very well-told story. Inventory management system, like...
Yeah.
Also really
Boxes.
Fun to... being able to hide in a box, that's right. Hide in lockers, you name it.
Yeah. Put out nudie mags to distract the guards.
That's like the poison rice from Tenchu,
exactly.
but like,
good stuff.
Doesn't kill them.
It
only excites them. So yeah, that's my number 6 pick for retro games, and I have to say, if you don't like this game, I don't like you.
Oh, heard that.
Yeah, sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings. I didn't mean it.
My number 5 is going to be on a lot of people's, I think, top lists ever. A lot of it's rated as one of the best games ever, and that's Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is such a great game. I played it so much as a kid, and I actually went back and purchased it on my PS3 and played through the whole game, killed Sephiroth, did the whole thing. There's so many memorable moments in the game, starting from the very beginning when you're kind of running from the train and the reactor's exploding, to the part, one of the parts I loved is the Golden Saucer, where you're like in an arcade and there's tons of like games to play and tons of side missions, to, in my opinion, one of the craziest deaths in any game is Ares. She gets killed. She's a party member, and it was kind of the first time in a game that people, like, a lot of people would say it's the first time they like teared up in a game, because she's kind of the main love interest for Cloud, who's the main character, and about halfway through the game she's sitting there like hanging out, and out comes the biggest bad guy in the game and just stabs her, and your guy's like, she's floating in the water and he like lets her go, and that's like, it was a big moment. It was showing that video games could tell a story back in 1997. A real, like, solid story. And plus, if you play the last bad guy, he pulls the Earth into the sun, so that's a pretty cool magic move. He'll do it on you like 15 times. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but...
Can I make a confession?
Yeah.
I've never played Final Fantasy VII.
Bruh.
I know.
Have you played any Final Fantasies?
Yeah, I mean, I've played like little bits and pieces of them. I've only really like seen Mr. Lonely play like all of them straight through.
It'd be hard to go back and step back into it, I'll admit. I mean, if you go back and play it, there's a good chance it won't be overly enjoyable for you.
Well, aren't they? There's rumor that it's going to be remade.
Well, it is being remade.
Yeah.
Which is, if you go online and look up people react to Final Fantasy VII being remade, people go crazy, and I did too. I will admit, like, I was watching it and it was like the trailer's going on, and it's like you start to see little things that look like Final Fantasy VII. Then it shows the sword, then it shows the gun. But they've done this shit before, where they said, "Oh, we're just remastering it for PC," and everyone's like, "Dude, nobody cares."
Yeah, but it's not a remaster; it's a remake.
It's a remake. Yeah, all new graphics.
Similar to what the next game on my list actually does.
What is that?
Resident Evil 2.
Ooh,
and
is being remade.
Yeah, it's being remade, but I'm talking about the original one. This is what set the whole thing off for me. This was the first Resident Evil game that I actually played. Then I went back to play Resident Evil 1. This game is by far one of my favorite games of all time because of the variety of monsters that you have in this game, but also the ability to have 2 different characters, which they did in Resident Evil. And then also on another level, the boss. The boss is like very, very sympathetic. I would say that the story
William
in
Birkin
general,
and stuff?
yeah. The story in general was very well told. The cutscenes were really fun. And then the way that you progress through the game with, essentially a gun or a knife, or a gun and a knife, all the way up to like grenade launchers and stuff.
Yeah. That game was so good, and a lot of people didn't know if you put in the second disc first. You played as Claire, I think. I can't remember who's on which disc. But Claire. And they had kind of did it in Resident Evil 1, is where the game was different depending on who you picked, but the game was vastly different depending on who you picked with Resident Evil 2.
Yeah. Well, with Resident Evil 1, if you pick Chris Redfield, you only have a knife.
Well, you only have a knife, and you only get 6 slots rather than 8. That makes it really hard.
Yeah. So Resident Evil 2 did a really good job of being able to take Resident Evil 1 and make it better. And at the same time, I remember the feeling that I got from that game was also kind of horror. I wasn't afraid to play it, though.
It was a good game.
Yeah, my sister actually walked in on me playing that game one time. She's like, Jay, where the fuck did you get this game? My sister cussed a lot. She was, where the fuck did you get this game? You're not playing this shit anymore. And then I was like, why not? She was like, it's bad for you. And I was thinking in my head at the time, I was like, well, you just said 2 different cuss words. Like, me shooting zombies is bad. And she's like, you're shooting people. I was like, no, those are zombies. They're already dead.
I'm saving humanity.
Yeah, I should have said that. Yeah. But I was, I was a really young kid, so I didn't understand that concept either. I just let her talk.
One really cool thing about that game, too, was when you played through one or the other campaign, when you came back through as the second person, it would affect it. So if you took ammo, the second playthrough, that ammo's gone. So if you know it's coming, you can be like, well, I know that I'm going to be needing this ammo as Claire in the next playthrough, I'll leave it. And then when you came back through, there's the ammo. And you can do the same thing with grenade launchers, gun parts, that kind of stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Number 5.
Well, keeping in the tradition, Resident Evil Director's Cut is my number 4. I had Resident Evil Director's Cut. I never owned the original Resident Evil, just Director's Cut. And I can say, and I do admit, that I beat the whole game with Chris. Yeah, and the thing that Chris also doesn't have is, he doesn't get the shotgun early, because if you get the shotgun early as Jill, Barry saves you from becoming a, quote, Jill sandwich. If you're Chris, Barry doesn't save you, you just die. So you can't get the shotgun early. You actually have to wait till later. But yeah, I beat that whole game with Chris.
Damn, son, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a classic game. I love that game. The inventory management's so good. I loved how you went into the inventory and you opened, like, you could look at a book and open it, like, in the inventory and find something out of the book. Just the little things like that.
Yeah, going back to both those first 2 games, that was another one of my favorite parts, is going back and reading, like, the documents that you collect.
Yeah.
Like, seeing somebody slip into madness from that was one of my favorite things. I think it was in Resident Evil Director's Cut, or the first
original
one,
yep.
where you see somebody's descent into becoming a zombie, where all they craved were, like eating brains and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a documented sort of journal entry, which was really fun to read.
No, and it wasn't Resident Evil 1. I can remember the room, and it's really cool. He talks about, like, how he's playing poker with all these guys, and then he's like, yeah, I don't know why, but the monkey came up and bit me, and he's like slowly descending, and eventually he's just like itchy.
Yeah.
And so yes, that was awesome, and there's so much backstory in all those little documents. Super good game.
Well done.
That's my number 4.
Well, I should issue this as a disclaimer. It's a little too late for this, but Scott and I have not really collaborated on our list that much. Like, we had a loose idea of what our games were, so I had no idea that his game was going to be Resident Evil. So it kind of ruined the surprise, I guess, when I was talking about Resident Evil during my Resident Evil 2.
That's no big deal, though.
Yeah, I apologize anyways.
That's okay.
My number 4, it's going to be one on the divorce console.
Ooh.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So, there were so many rumors about what could be done, what couldn't be done in this game. But on top of that, the game was just a fun playthrough. The music was excellent. And then the other fun part about it was being able to play as Tails. The multiplayer in it. It was really fun.
It was a real good addition, like a plus to the original Sonic. Like, it added a lot.
Yeah, and the other cool thing about it too is seeing people do speedruns again. Like that's just one of my favorite things to watch now is people doing speedruns on a speedster game.
Sure.
The other really cool thing was being able to kind of use your items wisely. That ring conservation was also another thing too. Like if you were hit and you got to go back to get some of those rings just to be able to beat a boss or something like that. That's key. I remember there were a few stages in that really pissed me off. One of them in particularly was the chemical plant. I hated drowning in the chemical plant and being like trapped underwater.
Yeah, that was the one that killed my young self. I never passed that one.
Oh. Sorry to reopen wounds.
That's okay. I forgive you.
I hated the oil one too. That one was really annoying.
I don't remember that one.
Oh. Well, if you haven't got past the chemical plant, then you've never played it. So that is my number 4, and it was an excellent game, and it brings back very good memories.
My number 3 is going to be, again, on top of a lot of people's lists. Earthbound. Earthbound is a classic. It's an RPG, and it's definitely different than any RPG that you'd normally play. For example, you play as just regular kids. All your inventory stuff is broken bats or slingshots or yo-yos, so it's like or a BB gun. That's your items to attack enemies. Your healing potions, if you will, would be like cookies. You eat a cookie and you feel better. And it's really interesting. It's about like these aliens invading, and it's really good, and the art style is really good. It has one of the best soundtracks ever. I highly recommend that one. I'd probably recommend playing over a lot of other ones if you're trying to get into it and you've never got into it. It's definitely a really good game.
Now, that was one of those games that your grandmother left for you, right? Yeah,
my grandma left a big box copy of Earthbound with the original strategy guide. I went there's a place near us that takes old games. It's called the CD Game Exchange. And I went in there, and he had a couple different Super Nintendo games, and I asked him, I said, hey, I have an in-box copy of Earthbound with the original guide in the original box. I said, the guide's in bad condition. I was like, if I brought it in and sold it, which I didn't plan on selling it, but if I brought it, how much would he give me? He's like, we'd have to pull it apart and check and make sure it's real, because we don't see them that often. A lot of times they're fake. And he's like, once we check to make sure it's real, he says probably starting offer would be $400 on it. And I was like, dang, I'll never sell it. But
you could get a physical copy of Fortnite.
I know. I should trade in my old copy of Earthbound and buy a physical copy of Fortnite.
You know, the funny thing about... so for those of you that aren't from where we're from, we're recording in Portland, Oregon. I feel like every single CD Game Exchange is employed by the weirdest, most like burnt out people that you could even imagine. It's the type of people that... Have you ever seen that movie High Fidelity with John Cusack, Jack Black,
no.
and I don't know the other dude's name? Like, just these burnt out losers in a record store. Those are the type of dudes
yeah, definitely. The guy I go to is pretty nice, but they definitely look kind of like burnt out hipsters.
Yeah. I mean, they're extremely helpful most of the time, unless you say one thing that's just not right, or maybe just not so. And then they jump on you for that.
Or if you're looking for anything specific. Like, you can't go in there looking for something specific. You just have to be looking for random stuff. They have one thing they do have a good deal on is if you want seasons of anything. Like, if you want a bunch of... Like, I went in there, I got the first 5 seasons of King of the Hill for $50. That's a good deal.
Yeah. Or band t-shirts, because they got a lot of good band t-shirts.
Oh, wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But that's my number 3, Earthbound. Go play it. It's a great one. I believe it's on the Super Nintendo Virtual Console, or no, the Mini.
Yeah.
I think.
Alright, so my number 3 is going to be one that will definitely make it onto a lot of people's, top whatever list. And this is the best of the Mortal Kombat trilogy.
It's a good game, man. I played a lot of Mortal Kombat.
And the best part about it is it has like every single character. I mean, one that you're obviously missing is Goro.
Oh yeah, he's classic.
But aside from that, you get every single character. You have all of your ninjas, you have all of your robots, you have all of your ninja women, you have Cabal. Like I could name all of them, but that would be very boring. The other cool part about it was you got really cool endings for each of these characters too.
Mortal Kombat's just the best fighting game in my opinion.
Yeah, tons
so
of
good.
stages. Really beautifully done stages too. The other part that was really cool about it for me is I had the one for Nintendo 64, but you could do 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, or you could do like a tournament style 8 versus 8 combat, which was really cool. And then depending on the codes that you put in, you could actually play like a little mini game of like Space Invaders.
Oh wow!
It's kind of
That's
stupid,
cool.
but it was
kind of
cool.
cool.
Or Pong, you could also play Pong. So those are some retro games in themselves.
That's great.
But it was super fun, man. Like, and then the other cool thing too is depending on like the code that you do, you can actually unlock more characters like Human Smoke and Chameleon, the female version of Chameleon.
I'll have to bring it, but I actually have a super sweet Sub-Zero mask that Robert made me. Robert's really crafty, and he takes a balaclava and he takes basically a board game and cuts up and the fabric, and I have a really sweet Sub-Zero mask.
Dang.
That's homemade. It's super sweet. Because Sub-Zero's always been my favorite. His favorite is always Scorpion.
Yeah,
and so
me too.
we always butted heads on that because Scorpion sucks in comparison to Sub-Zero, but...
That's not true. And Robert would agree with me on this one. How dare you? And I say good day. Well, actually, hang on. We got to finish this first.
Number 2?
Yeah.
My number 2. First game I can remember playing, Mario Brothers 3.
That's a great one.
Is it called the Tanaka suit?
Yeah.
You can fly really high. The frog suit, the Hammer Bros suit, all the different suits, the original loot boxes, which is when you walked in and actually got to pick one of the
Which one did you go for?
I always randomly picked one.
I always went for the middle one, and then when I started getting crap, I would go for the first one.
But that game I thought was classic. They added so much to the Mario formula. There are 1 billion levels. There's 1 billion secrets. It's just a really good game, except for the level with the sun on it. I hate that level.
Mr. Sun?
Yeah, the worst.
If you're like constantly sprinting, you can get over it. And if you have like the Tanuki suit.
Obviously you can get over it.
Yeah. I didn't think it was that bad. But the other cool thing too is like I was always like an expert at getting stars at the end of the stage, so I get 5 extra lives.
Wow. I could never do that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Your number 2, sir?
My number 2 is GoldenEye on Nintendo 64.
It's a good one.
I love it, and
RCP
I'm sure
90s for days.
So, okay, funny story about that is all of my like cousins and my brother, they would always pick power weapons in the multiplayer, which had the RCP-90s, and like if you selected the RCP-90, like it was lights out, everybody was dead. And then all of like my brothers and cousins would also find the body armor and then guard it while they had the RCP-90, so that they would just win. It was so stupid. But the soundtrack was awesome. The actual movie that it was based on was like one of the better Bond films.
GoldenEye. That's
Yeah.
a good one. It didn't have Sean Bean in it?
I don't know who that is.
Boromir from Lord of the Rings. He was 009, I think, in that movie. I could be
5.
wrong. 005, is that what it is?
6.
006. Okay.
Yeah. So the music was good. The gameplay was excellent. The graphics at the time were excellent. And the stages were super fun. And if you failed one of your mission objectives, it doesn't cancel the mission. You can still play out the mission. Yeah. Probably the funnest part about it was when you beat all the different difficulties and you get 007 agent. Then you can make the enemies as strong as you want to make them. You would unlock the cheats, so you could turn on invincibility and infinite ammo.
Like, hey, I know someone who has a cart where they beat everything, and then they bring their cart and they had all the cheats, and you're like, oh, paintball mode.
Yeah, I think
big head mode.
I think my copy of GoldenEye has.
We should play it sometime.
Yeah, definitely. And if not, then I'll just throw on an emulator and we can play that too.
Wham.
Yep. All right. Your grand number 1.
Numero uno, which is also my favorite game, just barely beating out The Last of Us, is Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger.
This is another JRPG. Again, I'm not really into JRPGs per se, but this is my favorite game ever. Again, this is a game I played with my late great grandma. It's my favorite game because every time I play it, the soundtrack just hits me right in the nostalgia, hits me right in the feels. It's probably always going to be my favorite game.
I thought you were going to say it hit you right in the nuts or something.
This is an interesting game in that there's so many characters to play with that you got to play as. You get to play as. There's I think there's probably 8 different characters that you can cycle into your main three party. Partially through the game, the main character dies. So, whenever you play an RPG, your strongest guy is always your main guy. He's the guy you pump everything into. He's the guy who hits the hardest. Well, he dies. And so you can actually resurrect him if you know the way. But it's also one of the original games to have multiple endings. So it had a bunch of different endings, which was really cool. It's just my favorite game. The artwork is really good. It has a really good story. Go play it. It's good.
Okay. And it's on Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo. I do also have a boxed copy of that game that I got from my grandma as well.
Is that also as expensive as a physical copy of Fortnite?
I don't believe that game's worth quite as much. I know it has the original price tag on it of $80 back in the 90s, yeah.
I didn't realize those games were so expensive back then. That's outrageous.
I'm guessing it's probably worth like $150. It's still worth a lot, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, that's my number one. What is your number one, sir?
My numero uno is Mario Brothers. The very original Mario Brothers. OG Mario Brothers. It was tough because I wanted to pick Mario Brothers 3, and I was like, Mario Brothers is the one that set it all off. Biggest reason is because, again, it set everything off. The music was iconic. The levels were super fun to play through.
Anybody could play it.
Anybody can play it and have fun.
Like your mom would sit down and play with you and be like, wow, this game's actually fun.
Yeah, and then another thing is I like watching speedruns of that. It's really interesting because there are a lot of secrets that people exploit in that game.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry to interrupt you real quick. If you're into speedruns, you should check out Awesome Games Done Quick or Summer Games Done Quick. Twice a year, a week block where 24/7 all they do is play through old games speedrunning them.
Damn.
Like they were doing Mega Man last night.
That's a good one.
But anyway, sorry to interrupt you. But yes, exactly. Speedruns. I remember there's some dude who did it in 11 minutes or some crazy thing like that.
Damn, son.
Impressive.
Yeah, that's my number one. Did you have any honorable mentions?
The 2 that I wrote down is Final Fantasy 3.
Yeah.
The artwork specifically and the music in that game was really great. That was a Super Nintendo game. Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, yeah.
Crash Bandicoot 2, Wrath of Cortex. Loved that game. I played the heck out of that game. I still have it on PS1, I'm pretty sure. And then Spyro the Dragon. Love Spyro the Dragon. That's my other mention. All PlayStation 1 games. Those are PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah.
What about you?
I definitely had some. And a lot of these were on regular, just Nintendo NES. Mega Man 2. Mm-hmm. Normally it would have made it in a top 10, but I just couldn't see myself removing any of these ones.
Sure.
And then Battletoads, that was one that I thoroughly enjoyed. Battletoads is set for a new game, a new version, so that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I know you're excited for that one.
Yeah, very excited. And then the other one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Manhattan Project.
I loved those games. They used to, back in the day, Pizza Hut had this thing going. Maybe you talked about this before.
Yeah.
Pizza had this thing going where they had Nintendos in their Pizza Huts, and I used to go to the local Pizza Hut, and play Ninja Turtles.
And then, if you were running low on health during any of those stages, and you happen to come across pizza, it would be Pizza Hut pizza. So, nice product placement.
Great.
Pizza Hut. It was great.
Got me to go to Pizza Hut.
For shizzle. So those were my honorable mentions. And
those are solid games.
Yeah, and that about wraps up the retro games. But there are so many that we could have talked about, and I'm sure there are so many that people would have in their top 10s over the ones that we had.
Sure,
it's totally up for debate.
I think that the one thing that seems to be seems to be really important to people when they're talking about their favorite retro games is a memory that's associated with it. Your cousin or your brother or, your mom. It's memories that you had with people when you were young and playing those games. Even if the games aren't necessarily amazing, the memories that we created with them are what like really cement them as your favorite retro games, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it also depends on the type of person too. You talk to Jesse Naylor, that guy. He has a couple of sports games in his, and I'm a sports guy. I just didn't have any in mine.
Yeah,
because there's so many to pick from.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and none of them, in my opinion, leave a lasting effect. Because next year, I think the game's just a little better, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it, I think, for now.
That wraps it up for right now. And again, for the love of God, if you can, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram at PeanutButter&Triggered. And if you like email, that's the next step better than snail mail. We're pbtpod@gmail.com. Hit us up. And
next week.
One last thing. Hit us up for those stickers. I just had my guy make some more. Shout out to Kevin with an AN.
Shout out. And there's a few. I was going to say, next week we'll be announcing a few of those winners. Also, shout out to my boy Robbie, just graduated basic training, and the whole time I've been doing the show, he hasn't been able to listen because he's been in basic. So now he's listening to the backlog, and he texted me the other day laughing about the divorced console. So I told him, start asking around because you'll understand that Sega is a divorced console.
Well, according to many, according to Naylor too.
Yeah, according to a lot of people.
And then also, big shout out goes out to my guy Javad on Instagram.
Biggest of shout outs. Actually, we might change the name Peanut Butter and Javad.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. I'm sure he'd be fine with it too. All right, thanks everybody, and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Bye.
Peace.